Hey guys, welcome back to SAP with IK. Hope you're all doing good. First of all, Happy New Year to all of you, and many thanks to all the viewers for your support and encouragement in progressing this channel. My only motivation from you, is basically your feedbacks, your likes, and more subscribers. And I wish to have the same in the future as well. So let's get into the topic. So today's topic will be on the PP-PI configuration setup, and this is basically used whenever you are going to set up the SAP system for any pharmaceutical company from the production planning point of view. This topic will be basically for the process order management and what kind of configurations are needed in order to enable the production planning setup for any pharmaceutical or food-based company. So let's get into the details. So here in this slide, we can see the configuration steps in a sequential manner from top to the bottom. So the first thing is basically to define the order types for the process order. So for this, we can use the transaction code CORN, or else I will also show you the SPRO path on how on what to follow in the SAP system. And then we have the order type dependent parameters. So here we use the transaction COR4, and this order type dependent parameters will be based on the plant and the order type combination. So let's say in your business scenario, you want to have two different process order types. Let's say PI01 and PI02. So PI01, it stands for the standard or the regular manufacturing process, and PI02, it may be for the rework process, or maybe a make to order scenario also. So like in this case, PI01 could be for the make to stock, and PI02 could be for the make to order scenario. So in that case, we are going to configure these processor types based on the order type along with the plant combination. And then in CO82 transaction, we basically define the number ranges for the process orders, and this would be based on the process order type that we have configured in the first step. So each process order type can have its own number range sequence. So let's say the order type PI01 can have the number range starting from 7 series, and whereas the order type PI02 can start with a number range from 8 series, right? So on and so forth. And then we have the production scheduling profile. So for this, we are going to use the transaction CORY. And again, the production scheduling profile is based on the combination of the plant and also the scheduling profile that you have created in that particular plant. And under this production scheduling profile, we basically can define, the order types which are pre-configured based on the business scenario. So in the earlier step, in the first step, you have created multiple process order types, and then we are going to assign those process orders, the process order types in this particular production scheduling profile, and then manage what order type should be picked in a particular scenario. So we will get into more details once we go into the SAP screen. And then we are going to define the production supervisor, and for that we use the transaction CORU. And after that we have to define the checking control, and for that we use the transaction OPJK. So in the entire list of these transactions codes, only few might sync with the shop floor configuration setup for the discrete manufacturing, but not all. Something like the OPJK and OPUZ. And in the OPUZ, we basically define the scheduling parameters for the process orders. And then in OPK4, we define the confirmation parameters. So the confirmation parameters, they basically helps us, like whenever you want to confirm any particular phase in the process order. So how should the values appear in that particular screen in the COR section? So as soon as you enter the process order number and the phase number, so should the values be automatically be populated there, or should the user enter the actual values, right? So those kind of settings will be configured in this OPK4. And then finally, we have the defined values for generation of operations, and there we use the transaction OPJG. So OPJG, it basically helps us to understand, the creation of a predefined set of operation and its corresponding work center. So whenever you start creating a process order without the reference of any material, where we do not know what is the bill of material and what is the master recipe assigned to that material. Why? Because the material itself is not used in the process order. So let's take an example of a rework scenario. So whenever we create a rework process order, so by default, an dummy kind of an operation would be generated into that process order, and then you can decide like what steps to be performed in this particular rework scenario. Okay, so that is about the configuration steps that you have to do sequentially in order to enable or configure the process order setup for any pharmaceutical or a food based or maybe an uh, oil and gas, or I mean it basically it depends on the industry, right? So if it is a process based manufacturing process, then definitely you would have to configure the entire steps that we discussed so far in SAP. And the first step is basically I would like to create the order types for the process orders, and for that I can directly use the transaction CORN con, and then we can start creating the process order types. So if I go into the detail of this process order types, so here we can basically assign the settlement profile, the description of the process order, and also the classification possible or not. And along with that, we can also assign the status profile. So whenever you look at the process order, there could be a user status, right? So this is where we are going to assign the user status profile based on the order type. And here, if you look at the order category, it shows as 40. So 40 basically stands for the process order. And whereas the order category 10, it stands for the production order, which is basically used in the discrete manufacturing process. So by looking at the order category as well, we can have an understanding whether it is a process order or a production order. And now if I show you the SPRO path, so once we are into the IMG guide, so we just need to scroll down. So here we have the production planning for process industries. And if you go into the detailed note of that, you could see the process order, right? So if I just open it, you will see the master data. And if you open the master data folder, you have this order, and again open it. So there you have the defined order types, which is nothing but the CORN transaction that we just discussed. And the next thing is the order type dependent parameters. So in the order type dependent parameters, we are going to assign these order types that we have created in our previous step and assign it to the particular plant. Okay, so let's take this example, 1000 plant with the order type as PI01. And if I go into the details of it, then we can see these particular fields. So let's discuss at a high level what these fields basically mean. So the first one is on the production version. So how should the production version basically be read into the process order? So whenever we create a process order, let's say there might be multiple production versions for each material depending on the product, right? So how should the production versions be selected automatically by the system itself? So here we define basically whether should it be an automatic selection of production version based on the order quantity or the validity, or should it be left to the user to do a manual selection of production version. So if we choose this option, the manual selection of production version, so then a pop-up screen appears for the user whenever he creates a process order, and there he has to select that particular production version, and based on that, the master data would be copied into the process order. And then you have the recipe for the component detail verification, approval required, and the operation detail verification. So these few checks are basically done on the master recipe that has been associated with the material master. Okay, and then we have the master recipe selection. So here the master recipe selection, it basically pops out as the master recipe is mandatory, or should it be automatically selected, or should it be manually selected by the user, or maybe do not use a master recipe. So it depends on the order type that you are basically creating it. For any standard process order, that should be with this option of 6, or the automatic selection, and making this master recipe as a mandatory parameter. And then you have the relationship view as the predecessor or the successor. And then we have the selection ID. So this selection ID is basically a combination of the bill of material and the master recipe. So in the master recipe, if you take a look at the header data, you would have the usage and the status across each and every master recipe, right? So it varies from product to product again. So if it is an in-house manufactured item, then certainly you would have the usage as a production, and the status could be, the usage could be as universal. So here, if you look at these options, if I go to this 4, so here we have the selection procedure as 0, 1 with the type as 2. So this type basically indicates the master recipe. So for routing, we will have the type as N, right? So this is the type of the routing group. And whereas for the master recipe, we will always have the type as 2. And then the usage. So the 1 usage, it basically denotes for the production purpose, and 3 denotes for the universal purpose, right? So typically we use, for any in-house manufactured item, the usage in the master recipe should be as 1 production, and the status, it should be as released general. In the same way, if you have like multiple selection profiles with various combinations of the status, so this is like customizable, right? So you can create your own number of selection profiles based on the combinations you have under the status and the usage. So for 4 again, with the selection priority as 2. So this is the selection priority. So the first priority goes to this, and the second priority goes to this, and the third priority goes to this. Having said that, based on the usage and the status that we assign in the master recipe, the selection ID would be assigned to these combinations, and the same will be configured in the order type dependent parameters. So with this selection ID, the system will then know that what usage of master recipe and what status of master recipe should be read or maybe collected from the system and posted into the process order. So without this particular value, so then system wouldn't know like what parameters should be considered while reading the master data of that particular product. Okay, and then we have the process data management. So we have 3 options here. One is the batch recording required, and the second one is order recording required, and the third one is no process data documentation required. So these are basically used whenever you are working with a PI sheet or a work instruction sheet. So in case of an FDA approved company, if your customer is following the FDA guidelines and they are following the good manufacturing practices, then you should go with the electronic documentation of the batch that you're going to manufacture. So in that case, we use this option as batch record required. So whenever we use this option, it means that the entire history or the life cycle of that particular batch, starting from the creation of the batch until the sale of that particular batch. So the complete list of documents will be attached to this particular batch record. And while configuring the batch record as well, you can choose whether you would like to store only the in-house operations for that particular batch, and what raw materials have you used, and from which supplier have you procured this raw material, and what are those batch characteristics, and what is the process order number that you have created in order to manufacture the batch. So when did the batch actually was planned to start in the shop floor, and what was the actual date you have started the manufacturing, and what components have you used, and how many and how much quantity have you used, and were there any deviations, and how many operations have you processed through the manufacturing cycle of that particular batch, and are there any sub-level batches for the semi-finished that are involved in the manufacturing process, and what is the PI sheet number, and what is the inspection lot for the incoming inspection, and what is the inspection lot for the in-process inspection, and what is the inspection lot for the goods receipt from the production, I mean to say the 04 inspection lot. So all the details related to that particular batch we have manufactured will be stored under this batch record. And we use a separate transaction in order to maintain that data, and that is COEBR. And we'll make out a different video to study that particular process. And then in the process order, you typically see your operations being incrementing with the 10, right? So here you can define, should it increment with the number of 10, or should it increment based on like 20, 40, 60, and maybe if you just need it like 001, and should the sequence be the next subsequent number of this incremental operation. So here if I use this as 0001, then my incrementing operation would be 0002. So here in this case, if it is 0010, then it would be 0020, right? And then this is about the master data tab. And if we go into the planning, here we can define the predefined MRP controllers and also the production schedulers based on the plant and the process order type. And then we have the application of the bill of material. You know, whenever we create a bill of material and we process it through CS11 and CS15 transaction, it would ask for the application, right? So here we always choose the application as PI01 for the process manufacturing and PP01 for the discrete manufacturing. And then we have the bomb explosion. Let me show you the options. So now here we have three options. So do not read the bomb explosion, or read the explosion date from the plant order, or read with newly determined explosion date. So these explosion dates, you know, it happens whenever we start creating the process order or maybe the plant order. So let's say if we choose this option 1, which says to read the explosion date from the plant order, it means that whatever date we have in the plant order as the bomb explosion date, so from that particular date, the changes that we have in the corresponding bill of material, those will be incorporated into the process order. Okay, so that is how it works. And then for the batch determination, so here we have the search procedure that we can assign based on the order type and the plant combination. So here, you know, it depends on the search procedures that you would like to customize, and that particular batch search procedure should be selected in this particular field. And then we have the quality inspection. If you would like to default any quality inspection irrespective of the material master, so then the first priority goes to the value that you are going to assign it in this particular field. So whatever process order has been created with these two combinations of the plant and the process order type, it will always have the predefined inspection type over here that has been configured. And then under the implementation tab, you have the status change documents, like whatever changes you do on a particular status. So should that be captured at the header level, operation level, and also the material level. So if you activate these, then all those change documents would be updated. So I suggest you to activate these. And then the shop floor information system, this is basically used for the reports like COO ISPI, the order information system. And then the documentation of goods movements. So most of the consultants, you know, they come to me saying that, I mean, I received several emails from them saying that I have configured a new order type, but the transactions or the movement types, what I've done on that particular order are not visible under the documented goods movements. So the reason is that if you do not check these options here, right? So the activities, whatever we see here, will not be documented or saved for that particular process order. So let's say if I do not check this particular option of the goods receipt for process order, so it this will not basically stop me to post the goods receipt in the MyGo, right? It will allow me to post the transaction, but the documents will not be uh, stored in this particular process order. So in any process order, if you go into the header menu and go into the details of the documented goods movement, so there we can have a clear picture of the complete transactions. I mean to say the movement types that we have made with a reference to that particular process order will be stored over there, right? So if you need to have such functionality, then you always need to make sure that these checkboxes are activated. Okay, so without this, the documented goods movements will not be saved in that particular process order, but will be stored in the backend. I mean to say the tables like MSEG, okay, where you store the documented data for the goods movements. And then in the cost accounting, so here in the process order, we basically have the variance calculation, the settlement, and the settlement rules, right? So those features will be and those options will be based on the values that you assign in this particular tab. These values that you see here, this will be basically done by the CO team. The costing uh, consultant will pre-configure these values and provide it to us, so where we can directly assign it to the order type and the plan combinations. And then we have the profiles, like in what way should we take a look at the missing part list or maybe the collective order while displaying them. So this is basically for the reporting standpoint in the process order. So that's about the order type dependent parameters. If I go back one step, then we have the number ranges. So we choose this option to define the number ranges for orders or the process orders, and then click on the overview. So this overview, it details us the complete list of process order types that have been assigned to a specific number range. So from this screen, I can basically understand that this is the number range starting with 6 and ending with 64999. So this number range is being used by the complete set of process order types. Okay, and in the same way, if there are several objects, so let's say the service orders here in this case. So for the service orders, the number range, it basically starts from 500 so on to 5999, and these are the service order types that will be using this particular number range. Okay, and here on the right side, we could see the current number range of the process orders in the system. And then if you would like to assign a particular number range status and to understand the number range status of the process orders, so we go into the details of this intervals, and here we could see these numbers in the first column, right? So it basically stands for the number range number. So here we have 01, 02, 03, 04, and so on, right? So what does this basically stand? And please make a note that here we'll take an example of the first one, the number 01, and which has a number range starting from 6 all zeros to 64999. So if we go back one step and click on the groups here, so here you could see the number range interval number. So here the 01, it basically stands for this particular process order in this particular sequence of the number range. So if you are going to assign your order type to this particular group, then you have to be aware of that, right? And from here you can understand that 01, it basically stands for the process order, and this interval is having the complete set of process order numbers as we have seen in the screen. Okay, so that's about the number range interval. And then if we just scroll down slightly, here we could see the production scheduling profiles. So if I just minimize this to make it more clear for you. Okay, So it should be here. And so again, we are back to the process order, and under that we have the subnode as master data. So once you open the master data, then you will have the fourth one showing as the define production scheduling profiles. So these production scheduling profiles, they are basically assigned at the material master level. So in the material master, under the work scheduling view, you have a field for the production scheduling profile. So each and every material that has been intended to be manufactured in-house, it should definitely have a work scheduling view. So the material types, we basically assign them are the FERTs, the finished products, and the semi-finished products, right? So once you assign the production scheduling profile in the work scheduling view, so then it means that the parameters or the configurations that we have done under this particular production scheduling profile will be activated for that particular material code. So now what options do we have here under the production scheduling profile? So the first one, as you can see here, on creation and on release. So what happens on creation? So as soon as we create the process order, should it be released automatically upon saving it? So then if you like to have such function, then you need to activate this particular checkbox. It means that as soon as you create this process order, the status should be changed to released. Okay. And on release, what activities are you looking for? So let's say you are using the PI sheets, the process instructions, or maybe the work instruction sheets. So as soon as you release the process order, then itself the control recipe should be generated. So these control recipes, they will have the complete set of data that should be passed from the process order into the PI sheet, and vice versa. So the data, whatever you enter in the PI sheet in the CO60 transaction, that should come back and update the process order. So those kind of instructions will be available under this control recipe, and the control recipe basically is a medium that transfers the data back and forth between the process order and the PI sheet. And then execute printing. So as soon as you release the shop floor paper should be printed, then you use this option. And if you like to carry out the scheduling as soon as you release the order, so then you have to enable these options here. And then you have the material availability check. So if you enable this, it means that you're going to confirm the availability of the components, though they are partially available. And then for the capacity planning, so we need to assign the capacity planning profiles and the overall profiles in the process order, right? So this is where we basically assign it. And if you like to customize your own profile, you can very well do it from its corresponding configuration. And on the availability check, while you save or release the process order, you have to make sure that we are going to confirm the capacity and the work centers are scheduled with a finite based scheduling. And then down below you have the batch management. So for the auto batch creation, so what options do we have here? So is it like no automatic batches should be created in the production or the process order, and or the automatic batches should be created at the time of order creation, or should they be created at the time of order release? Similarly, for the classification of batches, so should they be carried out in the background, or should it be carried out in the foreground? Okay, or you don't need any classification of the batches. So these options are again available under this batch management node. And if you scroll down slightly here, we have the transport code, which basically is helpful whenever you have an integration with the warehouse management system along with PP, or maybe the PPW integration. So if you have that business scenario enabled, then you have to check for these options. So how should the creation of a transfer order and a transfer request be done whenever you create or maybe release a process order? So if you're not using the WM integration with PP, then you don't need to worry about these fields, but you just need to make sure of that these are unchecked, and you make this option as no creation of transfer requirements on the order release. And then we have the node for the confirmation, where you have these two options, no update of excess receipt and no update for short receipt. So these are basically used in order to calculate the variances on the order. So like I said before, we have the order type combinations being available here where you can assign. So based on your scenario, so let's say if you would like to create a make to stock uh, process order for that particular scenario, then you're going to assign the order type that is configured for the make to stock scenario. And similarly, if it is a make to order, you can assign the order type as order type relevant for the mirror. And without material, it is basically for the rework operation. And if you have a specific order type created in order to manage the rework operations, then you can assign it over here. Okay. And if you have no specific option and you just have one or a general order type for all these activities, then you can actually assign the same value in these three fields. But I recommend to use different order types for these three different fields. That's where the reporting, it could be clear for the HODs and the managers to review. And the last option that we have here is basically the copying of the best before date and the shelf life expiry date into the batch master. So these uh, dates, the shelf life date or the best before date, these are basically calculated in the process order during the creation or maybe the release itself. I mean, that depends on the options how we have chosen. So based on the order creation date, which can also be considered as the production date, or maybe the goods receipt date that we have updated while posting the MyGo on that particular process order. So based on the value and the dates, so the batch master would be updated with its corresponding shelf life expiry date, right? So let's say we have defined a shelf life expiry date in days, sorry, the shelf life expiry in days in the material master. Okay, so let's say we have defined like 365 days, and now the date of manufacture is 4th of Jan 2023. So now the shelf life expiry date or the SLED, it would be as 3rd of Jan 2024. So which is like 365 days from the date of manufacture. So should this be copied directly into the batch master or not? So it will be controlled by this particular checkbox. So that's how the production scheduling profile basically helps.